This is an audio recording of Bob the Photographer by Arthur M. Winfield, narrated by Right Here Audio. Chapter 9. Bob has a lively fight. Barker was alone, and no sooner had he disappeared over the high board fence than Bob made up his mind to follow him. It was quite dark by this time, and perched on the top of the fence, Bob could see little or nothing. He listened intently, but nothing save the hissing of escaping steam reached his ears. The yard was one attached to a planing mill and box factory. It was filled with boards and packing cases, and affording a number of excellent hiding places. Bob dropped inside the yard and stole cautiously forward until he reached a sort of driveway which divided the yard into two parts. Nothing was yet to be seen of Barker, and Bob was puzzled to know what had become of the robber. Stepping to a nook near a high pile of lumber, Bob stopped once more to listen. Was he mistaken, or had he heard the faint creaking of a board to his left? He bent in the direction and waited. No, he was not mistaken. There was the noise again. Feeling around, Bob found a billet of wood. It was 2 feet long and more than an inch thick, and would answer very well as a club. With the stick in his hand, he made his way cautiously to the spot whence the sound had proceeded. Suddenly, something brushed past him, and a second later he found himself confronted by Barker, who caught him by the arm. "What are you following me for?" demanded the man. Instead of replying, Bob raised the stick and struck the fellow on the head. "Stand where you are, Barker!" he cried. "What? Bob began Barker and stopped short. "You know me, I reckon," returned the youth. "Stand where you are, unless you want another taste of this stick." "Was it you in the hallway of that building?" demanded Barker in astonishment. "It was. Where are Casco and Grogan?" "Skipped the town," returned the robber. "Are you alone?" he went on anxiously as he tried to pierce the darkness behind Bob. "Never mind about that," returned the youth. "You come along with me." "Where to?" "I'll show you." "I don't think I will be such a fool." "If you don't come along, I'll knock you over with this stick," returned Bob decidedly. "I don't propose to stand any more fooling." "You talk mighty big for a boy," sneered Barker. "Perhaps I do, but I mean what I say. Come, move along." Instead of complying, Barker made a spring for the youth. Bob retreated, and the next instant the stick descended on the robber's head with such force that the man was knocked flat on his back. "Now will you mind?" demanded the youth, standing over him with the stick upraised. "The old Nick take you!" cried Barker in a rage. "Let up there! Will you promise to go along if I do?" Barker hesitated. His head ached from the blow Bob had administered, and he did not wish such a dose repeated. "Answer me." "Yes, I'll go." "But Bob, you're making a great mistake." "I don't think so." "You are. Do you know me?" "I know you are the man who said my father was a thief," was the bitter answer. "I was only fooling, Bob. I knew you wasn't telling the truth. I thought I could get you to join in our little plan to make money. And you found out I wasn't built that way, Barker." "That's so, but you were making a big mistake by handing me over to the police. I think it will be a first-class job done." "You want to learn something about yourself, don't you?" went on Barker significantly. Bob breathed hard. Barker had touched the subject dearest to his heart. "It's natural that I should, isn't it?" was the slow response. "Well, you will never learn anything by having me locked up." "Don't be too sure about that. I am dead positive, for nobody knows anything about that matter but me." "You are mistaken, Barker. No, I am not. There is a woman knows about it." Barker started. "What has Sarah Blake dared to tell you?" he began and stopped short. Bob caught the name and remembered it. Little did he dream of the peculiar circumstances under which he would meet Sarah Blake. "Never mind, Barker. I am not so much in the dark as you think." "Sarah doesn't know it all," grumbled Barker. "I am the only one that has all the facts." "That's the size of it. And if I let you go, what will you tell me?" "A good deal that will be to your interest." Bob looked at the man and smiled grimly. "I wouldn't trust you, Barker. I would rather hear what you had to say after you were behind the bars. I won't tell you a word then. You can live and die the poor, miserable nobody that you are now." "We'll see. Let me tell you something. Even if I could trust you to tell the whole truth, I wouldn't let you go. You're a criminal and your place is in prison. You'll never put me there. cried Barker. "Yes, I will. Now march along." "Where to?" "Over to that gate." Barker moved on as indicated. He wanted to run for it, but Bob kept the club raised, and he did not dare. Just as they neared the gate, footsteps were heard, and a man appeared with a lantern. "What's the matter here?" he demanded in broken English. "This man is a robber," said Bob. "I want him arrested." "By Chimney! Was dat so?" "Yes. Are you the watchman around here?" "Yeah. I dinks me I was hear somebody by de yard." "Will you call a policeman?" "Sure I will." The watchman hurried off and presently returned with an officer. In a few words, Bob told the policeman that Barker was one of the men who had robbed John Wright's house. The officer at once took the robber in charge, and Bob accompanied both. The station was some distance from the lumber yard, and Barker proposed that they take a horse car, stating that he had slipped on a log in the factory yard and sprained his ankle. To this the policeman consented, and smilingly added that if his ankle was sprained, perhaps he wouldn't feel much like trying to get away. "No confound the luck," returned the robber. The car was crowded, and all three were compelled to stand on the back platform. They had scarcely gone a block when the car stopped at rather a dark spot to take on a couple of passengers. There was squeezing on all sides, and for a moment Bob lost sight of both Barker and the policeman. Then, when the car started again, Bob looked around with a cry of dismay. The officer and the robber had disappeared. Bob forced his way inside of the car, thinking that the pair might have entered to get out of the crush outside. But a thorough search failed to reveal either of the persons in whom the youth was interested. "Gone!" ejaculated Bob with a sinking heart. "What's that?" asked a bystander. "Nothing. Did you see anything of that policeman and his prisoner?" "They got off at the last stop." "Thank you." Bob lost no time in leaving the car and hurrying back to the place. All was dark and nobody appeared in sight. "Hello there, officer," he called out. He repeated the call several times, and finally the policeman came running towards him, club in hand. "Where is the man?" asked Bob breathlessly. "That's what I want to know," returned the officer. "Did he get off with you?" "No, he jumped off and I followed." "Well, that's a fine piece of business," exclaimed Bob. "I'm not to blame," returned the officer, alarmed over the thought that he had in some way neglected to do his duty. "Really?" asked Bob sarcastically. He was angry. "No. Why didn't you watch him?" "It wasn't my business after I had delivered him to you." "Yes, it was." "It was not! You're a fine officer to take charge of a man." "Come, don't talk to me that way," cried the policeman. "You didn't attend to your business." "Say another word, and I'll run you in for loafing," cried the policeman, catching Bob by the arm. "Let go of me." "Then don't say it was my fault. I had nothing to do with it. It was your duty to keep watch of the man until you made a charge against him." The policeman thought he could hoodwink Bob by saying this, but the youth's common sense told him better. "It was all your fault," said Bob, breaking away. "I have your number, and perhaps I'll report you. Now I am going to hunt for the man again." And before the officer could stop him, Bob made off while the policeman went back to his beat, there to concoct some excuse for his failure to do his duty. Bob hurried down the street, looking in all directions for Barker, but the robber was nowhere to be seen. At the end of an hour, the youth was discouraged, and slowly and thoughtfully he made his way to his boarding house. How much had been missed by the escape of Barker! Not only the chance of recovering the stolen goods, but also that of interviewing the robber concerning the shrouded past. "But I'll meet him again some day, and then I won't trust him to any fool of a policeman," said Bob to himself. Chapter 10. Bob's First Customer. Mr. Starley was much interested in the story Bob had to tell him on the following morning. "Lawrence has got back, and his desk was robbed of $105, so he says. Those chaps are bad ones," said the boy. "They steal wherever they happen to be." The old photographer advised Bob to make a complaint against the officer who had allowed Barker to slip away, but Bob shook his head. "What's the use? He would find some excuse, and I would only get into trouble. No, after all, I'll simply do what I can alone and let the rest go." A week passed, and Bob made rapid strides in the art he was following, for photography now interested him more than ever before. One day, he was left alone at noon, and in rushed a young man. "I've got 15 minutes to spare," he said. "Can you give me a sitting in that time?" "I'm sorry, but Mr. Starley is out, and so is his assistant," said Bob. "Too bad! If I had a sitting today, when could I have the photos?" "All of them?" "The first one." "In a few hours. The others, if you want a dozen, would be done a couple of days later." "I wanted one tomorrow night, sure, My brother is going to South America day after tomorrow, and I promised him my picture to take along. The young man scratched his head. Can't you give me a sitting? I would rather you would wait, replied Bob, fearing Mr. Starley would not like such a proceeding. I can't wait. Go ahead if you know anything about the work. The young man insisted, and at last Bob consented to give him a sitting. With great care, Bob adjusted his focus and gave his customer what he considered an artistic pose. In a minute more, 2 plates were taken. How about proofs? Asked the youth as the young man pulled out his watch and then a roll of bills. I haven't time to come for them. How much will the dozen be? $4.50. Here's your money. Send that picture to my home on Mountain Avenue. My name is Ralph Maverick. And before Bob could say a word, the young man was gone. Ralph Maverick, murmured Bob to himself. I wonder if he has any relation to Grace. The two look a little alike. Perhaps they are sister and brother. When Mr. Starley returned, Bob related what he had done. The old photographer lost no time in looking at the plates and developing them. One is no good, but the other is excellent, he said. You gave him a first-rate pose, Bob. Get a frame and some paper, and we'll print a couple at once. You'll soon be a full-fledged photographer, and I'm glad of it, for Sidler drinks so much I'll have to discharge him. While Bob was getting the paper, he asked Mr. Starley if he knew the young man. Oh, yes, he is a son of Gregory Maverick, the president of the T.W.&L. Railroad. You can take the picture to his house as soon as it's done. This pleased Bob. He wished to see Grace Maverick once again, if possible, but he did not care to make a call unless he had business, being afraid she might think he had come to be rewarded for his bravery in helping her down the cliff. Bob left the photographing establishment at 6 o'clock with 4 of the pictures in his pocket. He had worked hard during the day, and he felt both tired and dirty. I think I'll go home first and wash, dress, and get supper before I deliver the picture, he said to himself. If I called at the house looking like this, Grace Maverick might take me for a tramp, which showed that Bob placed a high value on the beautiful young girl's opinion. Bob hurried to his boarding house and after a good scrubbing, dressed himself in a new suit he had just purchased. Then he hastily swallowed his supper and set out for Mountain Avenue. The way lay past the studio, and as Bob drew near to the place where he was employed, he noticed a crowd rushing along. What's up? He asked of a man who was running. Fire! Up the street! The man had hardly answered when with a shrill tooting an engine came tearing along, followed by a horse cart and a hook and ladder company. Bob was instantly interested. He had never witnessed a fire in the city, and he was anxious to see how the thing was managed. He followed the crowd. What was his astonishment to see the engine stop directly in front of the building in which the studio was situated. Back there! Cried a policeman to the crowd, while the fireman began to run a hose into the hallway. Why, where is the fire? Cried Bob in alarm. Upstairs, returned a bystander. They say it started in a photographic place. Bob turned pale. They must mean Mr. Starley's studio. He wondered if his employer was around. Bob had a key to the studio. Breaking through the crowd, he dashed past the policeman on duty. Here, what? Demanded the officer. I want to save our things if I can, returned Bob. He dashed up the first flight of stairs and then the second. The hallway was filling with smoke, but no fire was to be seen. But on the third landing he paused. The smoke was thicker than ever, and he could hear the faint crackling of flames. Would it be safe to venture farther? He hesitated for only a second. I'll save what I can, he murmured, and up he dashed. He was about to insert the key in the lock when he noticed that the door was already unfastened. He pushed it open and rushed in. The thick smoke rolled directly into his face, almost choking him. I can't stand this very long, was his thought. Suddenly, a puff of flame rolled overhead, lighting up the apartment. Guided by this, Bob made a rush forth the operating room, bent on saving the valuable lenses, if nothing more. He had just reached the curtain to this apartment when there came another puff of flame, followed by a shower of sparks. Some of the sparks alighted on a table in the corner filled with chemicals. There was an explosion almost immediately, and poor Bob was hurled backward while the chemicals flew all around him. The smoke was thick and completely bewildered. The lad could not tell which way to turn to reach the door. Once he started crawling on his hands and knees, and brought up directly opposite to where he wanted to go. The smoke was every moment getting thicker, and it looked as if the brave youth was to die like a rat in a trap. I must get out somehow, he muttered desperately. Why can't I find the door? He turned, and rising made a dash forward. Help! Help! The cry startled him. It came from the developing closet, and Bob recognized the voice as that of Mr. Starley. "Mr. Starley!" he called out. "Oh, Bob, is that you? Help me, in heaven's name!" "I will." Guided by the voice, Bob rushed through the operating room and threw open the door of the dark closet. A red light burned on a stand, and by it Bob saw his employer lying on the floor, one hand grasping a box of plates. "Help me, Bob!" "I will if I can, sir." "Can't you get up?" "Yes, but I can't walk. I tried to save all those new plates, and 2 of the boxes fell on my ankle. Take my hand." The old photographer did so and got up, although the movement caused him great pain. "I'm afraid we can't get out through the main room," said Bob. "The flames are breaking through everywhere." "I see. And your coat is on fire. Let me put it out." Mr. Starley caught the burnt portion in his hand and crushed it. "That must have caught when the chemicals exploded. Tell me, what is beyond this closet?" "The hallway, I believe." "There's no door out?" "There was, in that corner, but I nailed it up." "We must get it open somehow. Stand over there, out of the way." Mr. Starley followed directions. Bob pulled away the stand which stood before the closed door. "If I only had an axe," he said. "There's a hammer in the next room, on the shelf. I'll get it." Leaving Mr. Starley leaned against a table, Bob rushed out into the operating room. He found the hammer, and also brought with him the valuable lenses, which he knew his employer greatly prized. With all his force he began to batter on the door. At first it resisted his efforts, but finally with a crash one of the panels gave way. Then another panel was knocked out. With savage energy, Bob attacked the middle strip. His blows fell thick and fast. At last came a crash, and the top of the door was smashed into several parts. "Just in time!" cried Mr. Starley. "See, the whole operating room is in flames!" The hallway seemed to be now quite free from smoke. Bob leaped through the opening he had made and helped his employer to follow. "Hello? What's up here?" It was a fireman who asked the question. "We've just escaped," said Mr. Starley. "Help us get downstairs." "He can't walk," said Bob. "If you will get on one side of him, I will get on the other." The fireman willingly complied, and it was not long before they reached the sidewalk, where a denser crowd than ever had now congregated. Mr. Starley was assisted to a nearby drugstore, and a doctor at once gave his injured ankle proper attention. "I wish I'd saved my lenses," he sighed. The rest of the stuff in the place was not of so much account. "Here are the lenses," returned Bob, producing them. "What? Did you really get them?" "Yes. I trust they are not scratched," went on the youth, with considerable concern. "They do not appear to be. Bob, I shall not forget you for this work, nor for saving my life also." "Pooh! I didn't save your life," replied Bob, and he returned to the fire. By this time several other engines had arrived, and 6 streams of water were being poured on the flames. The firemen had a hard fight of it, but in less than an hour the fire was under control, although they continued on guard and would allow no one within the fire lines. Bob stood around for a while longer, and then he suddenly remembered the photographs in his pocket. He pulled them out and found they were uninjured, which was strange considering the rough usage they had seen. "I might as well deliver these and get it off my hands," he said to himself. "I wonder if Mr. Starley saved the plates so that we can print the others." Bob returned to the drugstore. He found a fellow photographer talking to Mr. Starley. A number of plates had been saved, among them the one containing Ralph Maverick's pictures, and these the other photographer said he would finish for Mr. Starley. At the drugstore, Bob brushed up as best he could. His new coat had several small holes burnt in it, but this could not be helped. Arriving at the Maverick mansion, he rang the bell and asked for Mr. Ralph Maverick. "Yes, he is in." "Please tell him I come from Mr. Starley's studio." The servant who had answered the summons retired, and presently Ralph Maverick appeared. He was well satisfied with the picture. "I don't see how Mr. Starley could have done any better," he said. Bob told the young man of the fire, but added that the pictures would nevertheless be ready in the course of a few days. "Well, it is too bad you were burnt out," said Ralph Maverick. "Will you start up again?" "I suppose so." A little more talk followed, and then Bob turned to go. He was keenly disappointed at not seeing Grace, but his disappointment was of short duration. Presently, while the two stood in the hallway, there was a rush of feet on the stairs, and Grace Maverick ran up. "There! I was afraid you would never call!" she cried, catching Bob by the hand and giving him a squeeze that made him blush. "Why, Grace, do you know him?" questioned Ralph Maverick in surprise. "Indeed I do," returned the beautiful girl warmly. "He is the young gentleman who saved my life when I fell over the cliff." "You don't say! I must shake hands with him myself. Why didn't you introduce yourself?" "Oh, He brought my picture. He didn't say anything about knowing you," went on Ralph. "Then you didn't come to see me?" asked Grace, pouting slightly. "Well, I'm glad I did see you," stammered Bob, "but I have to attend to business, you see," he went on lamely. "I work for a photographer, and we are fearfully busy. I've been looking for you ever since I got back from the seashore." "Yes, I heard you had gone," said Bob. "Come into the parlor, I want to talk to you. I thought sure you and Mr. Lanes would call together. He had to go on a trip for the house he represents. Otherwise I imagine he would have been glad to come," explained Bob. He was taken into an elegant parlor where he felt a good deal like a fish out of water, but Grace and her brother did all they could to make him feel at ease, and before he left he was quite at home. "Papa wants to see you very much," said Grace during the course of conversation. "He is not home tonight, but he will be tomorrow evening. Will you call then?" "I will if I can." "Oh, that won't do. You come sure, and I will make Papa stay home, even if he has got another engagement." "He might not care to do that," suggested Bob. "Oh, he cares to do whatever I want him to," returned the young lady. When Bob left, he felt in particularly high spirits. Why, he could not exactly state. He returned to his boarding house by way of a shortcut through a number of back streets. It was quite dark when he reached the steps of the boarding house. As he was about to ascend, latchkey in hand, he noticed a man, sitting on the curbstone, his head resting in his hands. Approaching the man, Bob shook him by the shoulder. "What's the matter with you?" he asked. The man stared at him vacantly. "What's that?" he asked. "I asked what was the matter with you," repeated Bob. Instead of replying, the man sprang to his feet and caught Bob by the throat. "I'll show you," he mumbled with a hiccough. "Give me back my money. Jim Casco, d'ye hear?"